Thank you for the kind introduction. It's wonderful to be here. I'll talk a little bit about a project we've been developing with funding from the Kavli Foundation and the Wellcome Trust, trying to build capacity in Africa and low-income and medium-income countries. Mental health and neurological disease are general problems, especially nowadays with social media. This, especially mental health, is becoming a global problem. But at the same time, as they try to become, as their general problem, and we try to make them studied at the global level, we need to share biological data, we need to share constructs across different countries. And this is not necessarily simple. At the same time, think about the fact that in the majority of the data available out there, this is an example from Genome-Wide Association, the majority of the data that we can access openly are actually not representing the majority or the distribution of population in the world. For example, in this case is for Genome-Wide Association study, 78% is from Caucasian and European descent. And the case of Africa, it's about 2.4%. In neuroimaging study, there was this recent nice paper by Weinberg and colleagues. They estimated that less than 5% of the research cohorts have African-descended brains. So the problem is endemic not just to Genome-Wide Association and genomics, but also to our problems and our studies. So the lack of resources, the lack of opportunities for growth, the lack of funding, the lack of clarity on laws, I'll talk more about that, and the lack of clarity on data governance are some of the major issues impacting the availability, reducing the availability of data from low and middle income countries. Resources means scanners, resources means university rooms, resources means the internet or electricity. I'll tell you more about that. Opportunity means travel grants. Opportunities means grants for doing research, so lack of funding. And clarity on laws is something quite important because if you're trying to collect data in Nigeria, you need to know whether it's possible for Nigerian brains to be shipped to Europe. And at the same time, you need to think about when you start working with individuals in countries that are, let's say, more fragile or different type of experience than ours in the high-income countries, what are we doing when we access their data? How should we govern the data? Are we doing data colonialism? So a couple of years ago now, we wrote this paper. I was the chair of the International Brain Initiative Data Sharing Working Group. The International Brain Initiative is an initiative of brain initiatives. So we have China, we have actually Korea, we have Japan, we have US, Canada, and Europe. And we're trying to coordinate efforts across the initiatives, what data is available, et cetera. And there was this panel of experts that met for over 1 year trying to figure out how to share data, how to describe the governance principles across all these different initiatives. And after 1 year, I said, hey, why don't we write a paper about the fact that we actually need to work on this hard and we need to develop these principles because we don't have these principles. So we made a few recommendations in the paper. We laid out the challenges and we said that we need to make international data governance a priority, so how to share data between countries. We need to develop principles for governance. We don't have those. We need to develop practical tools that allow the sharing of the data between different resources of the different countries. And we need to increase awareness and do education among all of us so that governance is not something that your IRB group does. Governance is not something that the manager or your institution or their lawyers do, but something that you are educated and do and can do. So ethical, legal, and technical transparency can actually build trust, increase impact of our work. Currently, the lack of clarity is hindering the availability of data and the sharing. And this is due to lack of transparency and navigability. Like, how can I move data from Germany to the US? What does really the GDPR say? Okay. What in turns comes out is that I can't work with many of my colleagues in Germany because we don't know what are actually the final interpretation of the GDPR. If we go to the lawyers of our institutions, their responsibility is to protect the institutions, not to accelerate science. So it's better to say no than to say yes. So it's us, the one that need to work. So if done right, data governance can actually facilitate research. And so we can develop frameworks that we can use between countries so that the sharing of data is facilitated. New students come, new group come, and they know what to do. They know what type of data can be shared and how can be shared, etc. Remember, open doesn't mean that you go on the internet and just like a picture on Facebook, you download a brain, right? Open means that there's access to that brain. So, but what is data governance? Data governance is the combination of the data ownership principle and processes, the data stewardship processes, the data accessibility processes, so privacy, compliance, security, data storage and sharing, so like where do you put the data, what type of systems you have, how do you compute the analysis, and then how do you extract knowledge and share knowledge, and who has the IP, who has the rights to make innovations over the data, all of that. And for all these processes, there's processes involved, there's technology involved, there's roles of different individuals, and there's many people involved. So we need to think about all this as we try to develop these frameworks. Currently, data governance is defined nationally or even closer within an institution. This means that access to data is limited to a specific user within a region. But we want to pool data across cohorts that might be in Canada, in the US, and in Europe, and that will help advancing understanding of mental health, how the variability across different regions and nations and different cultures, and that's our goal. So we did a first pilot, actually, a couple of years ago. We're still working on it, where we studied US, Australia, and EU, US. How can we share data? We used brainlife.io, the platform that was mentioned before, to do the study, and we figured out all the documentation that would be necessary, and now what the law said and what the law was meant to say, so that we could understand, like, can we put data on BrainLife, which is running currently on servers in the US, if the data is coming from Australia and if the data are coming from Europe. Analysis generated data user agreements, data processing agreements, data deposition consent forms. We have a draft of a framework for international data governance that should be reviewed by the wider community in the future to become a main framework. We modified BrainLife so that we have a compliant use of cookies. And next, we want to produce shareable documents and develop web apps that will guide the community to do data governance and access this document. So develop a practical approach and can help overcome the challenges. And if this is done responsibly, and we can actually improve society. But to do that, we need to bring together people like you, expert in technical aspect of the data, but also legal, individual with lived experiences, with needs and hopes for what this data can do. And then we need to think about the ethics and the cultures that we're dealing with. They're very different as you start moving across the globe. But facilitatory international data governance can actually change and improve and create networks of data sets across different countries that can help increase the number of data that we can analyze and the power of our analysis. So we developed Bridge. The project is funded by the Wellcome Trust, and is at year 1. We're organizing a workshop in Austin in September, and the idea is to transform these challenges into stepping stone to improve data governance. Here is an access to the project. You can go online if you're interested. I'll leave it there for a couple of seconds. We have a strong advisory board. Many people are involved, thanks to every one of you guys that are part of our advisory board. And we have organizations that are backing up the project across the globe. We are organizing regional workshop and global workshop, and we're working with specific cases, just like the one that you saw before, where we're trying to move data from different countries to one country to country. So one example is this amazing data set, the first Nigerian data set that will be published ever. This is Ebere Wogu, my collaborator in Nigeria. And Ebere, she went with her own means across different imaging centers, convinced them that they should share data, convinced them there was value to sharing data, and save the data on, I don't know, USB drives, move the data back, I don't know, to a, okay, I'll tell you one challenge that Ebere had, hard drive. Her only computer did not have enough data to share, to save for all the data sets. So just to get a sense, right? So she has data now that is, it looks like 15 years old data from the high-income countries. So it's clinical quality, gaps between the slices, 2D data. But the effort that went through this, it's actually what is important here. And the ability to do it and the hopes that can come out of that is what is important. She has to go to different regions. I have a map of Nigeria there because she went to different regions to do that. So power is actually not always there in Africa. I don't know if you know that. They have what is called load shedding. They shed the load out of the power grid, and a couple of times a day, so for 2 hours there's no electricity. You cannot keep a 3 Tesla scanner running in those conditions. So unstable and non-existent internet connection is often, the internet connection is only at the university. The scanners they have are low field. In fact, there's an amazing series of works trying to bring low field in Africa so they don't need the power. Improving low field MRI is one of the challenges that really bring hopes. There's no scanners at the universities. They're in these clinical facilities that you pay for independently as an individual. There's no health insurance for many of them. And Ebere was convincing this director that, hey, your clinical center should be on this paper, right? And then there's no relationship between these facilities and the university and research. There's no training for neuroimaging. There's very little training in Africa for neuroimaging. There's not many centers doing neuroimaging research. So they organize, Ebere and Damian Eke, my collaborator, organized the African Brain Data Science Academy. We had the first one last year in December, and now a second one that's going to be in the next December. And this is also in collaboration with INCF, which is an amazing platform for coordinating this effort and bringing training across the globe. So increased data diversity can help mental health studies, and it's a critical component of the robust findings and the findings we want to have. Please connect with us. We're looking for help. And the long-term vision is that we can share across geography in a responsible way. And thank you very much. We are organizing neuroinformatics, the assembly in Austin. There will be conversations about this. There will be a workshop about this. There will be training workshop following neuroinformatics. Thank you.